life that remind us, no matter how complicated or painful our past might be, that healing is always possible, that time, in its quiet and relentless way, has a power unlike anything else, that children, those beautiful, innocent souls we bring into this world, have a way of pulling even the most fractured people back together, not necessarily as lovers, not necessarily as partners, but as something perhaps even more powerful, as parents, as a team, as a united front built not on romance, but on love for something bigger than themselves. And on a warm Florida afternoon, the world got a front row seat to exactly that kind of moment. Tiger Woods, Elin Nordegren, two names that once dominated headlines for all the wrong reasons. Two people whose marriage became one of the most talked about, most dissected, most heartbreaking public splits of the 21st century. And yet, there they were, side by side, smiling, proud, walking up to a stage together to celebrate their son, Charlie, a 17-year-old young man who had just helped lead his high school golf team to a Florida state championship. Let that sink in for a moment. Tiger Woods and Elin Nordegren standing together, applauding their son, nearly 17 years after their world fell apart so publicly, so painfully. They found themselves united again, not by circumstance, not by obligation, but by the pure, unfiltered joy of watching their child succeed. This is their story. Not just the story of a scandal, not just the story of a divorce, but the full story of two people, a family, a journey through darkness and into something that looks, against all odds, a lot like peace. To understand where Tiger Woods and Elin Nordegren are today, you have to understand where they started. And to understand where they started, you have to understand who each of them was before they ever crossed paths. Tiger Woods. The name alone carries a weight that very few athletes in the history of sport can claim. Born Eldrick Taunt Woods on December 30th, 1975, in Cypress, California, Tiger was quite literally groomed from infancy to be the greatest golfer the world had ever seen. His father, Earl Woods, a former Green Beret and avid amateur golfer, began teaching his son the game before he could even walk. By the time Tiger was 2 years old, he had already appeared on television, putting on The Mike Douglas Show. By the time he was 3, he shot a 48 for 9 holes on a regulation course in Southern California. The world had never seen anything quite like it. Tiger went on to win 3 consecutive U.S. Junior Amateur Championships, 3 consecutive U.S. Amateur Championships, and by the time he turned professional in 1996, the golfing world was already buzzing with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for once-in-a-generation talents. Nike signed him to a then-record $40 million deal. The hype was stratospheric, and Tiger delivered. Almost immediately he delivered. In 1997, at just 21 years old, Tiger won the Masters tournament by 12 strokes, the largest margin of victory in Masters history at that time. He became the youngest player ever to win the Masters and the first player of African American or Asian heritage to win a major championship. The cultural significance of that moment cannot be overstated. Golf, a sport long associated with white country clubs and exclusivity, had been turned upside down by this young man with a beaming smile and a swing that looked like it had been engineered by God himself. Over the next decade, Tiger would go on to redefine golf entirely. He won 14 major championships, second only to the legendary Jack Nicklaus, who holds the record with 18. He spent more weeks ranked number 1 in the world than any other golfer in history. He became one of the most recognizable, most marketable athletes on the planet. He was not just a golfer, he was a phenomenon, a cultural icon, a symbol of excellence, discipline, and almost supernatural talent. And then there was Elin. Elin Maria Pernilla Nordegren was born on January 1st, 1980, in Stockholm, Sweden. The daughter of a Swedish politician and a former politician turned social worker, Elin grew up in a world that was comfortable, but far removed from the global celebrity she would one day find herself navigating. She was beautiful, strikingly so, with blonde hair, sharp Nordic features, and a quiet dignity that seemed to come naturally to her. She studied to become a child psychologist and worked as a nanny to support herself while attending school. It was that nanny job, working for Swedish golfer Jesper Parnevik and his wife Mia, that would change the course of her life forever. Tiger Woods met Elin Nordegren at the Open Championship in 2001. She was working as a nanny for the Parnevik family when Tiger spotted her and asked Jesper if he would introduce them. Elin, by most accounts, was not immediately swept off her feet. She was, by nature, reserved and cautious. She turned Tiger down the first time he asked for her number. It took persistence, charm, and the full weight of Tiger's considerable charisma to convince her to give him a chance. But eventually, she did. The two began dating in 2001, and their relationship quickly became one of the most closely watched romances in the sports world. Here was the greatest golfer on the planet, one of the most famous athletes alive, dating a Swedish nanny turned model who seemed refreshingly uninterested in the spotlight. She was his anchor, many would later say, the steady, grounding presence in a life that had become almost impossibly large. Tiger proposed in November 2003, presenting Elin with a $2 million engagement ring during a vacation in South Africa. On October 5, 2004, they were married at the Sandy Lane Resort in Barbados, an exclusive, private ceremony that reflected Elin's preference for keeping her personal life away from the cameras. For a while, everything looked perfect. Tiger continued to dominate golf, Elin pursued her education, they built a life together. A real life, one that seemed to transcend the often shallow and performative world of celebrity relationships. They bought a massive estate in Windermere, Florida. They started a family. In June 2007, their daughter Sam Alexis Woods was born. In February 2009, their son Charlie Axel Woods arrived. Tiger Woods had it all. The career, the trophies, the family, the fame, the money. By every external measure, his life was the American dream on steroids. And then, in the early hours of November 27, 2009, everything fell apart. It was the night after Thanksgiving, 2009. Tiger Woods was at his home in Windermere, Florida. At approximately 2:25 in the morning, he backed his black Cadillac Escalade out of his driveway, drove a short distance, and somehow hit a fire hydrant and then ran into a tree. He was found lying in the street, bleeding from the face, in and out of consciousness. In the days that followed, the story that emerged would shake the sports world to its core. The accident, it turned out, was not simply an accident. It was the opening crack in a dam that had been holding back a flood of secrets. Within days, reports began surfacing of extramarital affairs, then more reports, and then more. By the time the full picture had come into focus, Tiger Woods had been linked romantically with multiple women, affairs conducted over years, hidden behind the carefully constructed image of a devoted husband and father. The media coverage was unlike anything most people had ever seen for a sports story. Every day brought new revelations, new names, new details. The man who had seemed almost superhuman on the golf course, disciplined, focused, controlled, relentless, was revealed to have been living a staggering double life. And in the middle of it all was Elin. The details of what Elin experienced in those days and weeks have never been fully told in public because she has always been extraordinarily private. But we can imagine, or perhaps we cannot fully imagine, what it must have felt like to learn that your husband, the father of your 2 young children, had been conducting multiple affairs, some of them spanning years, while you were home raising a newborn and a toddler. The betrayal was total. It was public, and it was inescapable. Tiger Woods eventually came forward with a public statement, later followed by a televised apology in February 2010, one of the most memorable and uncomfortable moments in sports public relations. Standing before a small audience of family, friends, and invited guests, his mother seated in the front row, Tiger read a prepared statement in which he acknowledged his infidelity, apologized to his family, to Elin, to his fans, and to the game of golf. "I was unfaithful," he said, his voice careful and controlled. I had affairs, I cheated. What I did was not acceptable, and I am the only person to blame. He spoke about the Buddhist values his mother had raised him with. He spoke about the work he was doing in therapy. He spoke, most poignantly, about Elin, describing her as having shown enormous grace and poise in one of the most difficult situations any person could face. I have a lot of work to do, he said, and I intend to dedicate myself to doing it. The road ahead, however, was not a road they would walk together. In August 2010, Tiger and Elin's divorce was finalized. The settlement was reported to be in the range of $100 million, at the time one of the largest divorce settlements in history. Elin received primary custody of the children, with Tiger having liberal visitation rights. She also, under the terms of the agreement, was bound by a confidentiality clause, which is why she has spoken so little about what happened, even in the years since. Tiger Woods, for his part, had to figure out who he was on the other side of the greatest crisis.
For full video, click related link below or like and subscribe this channel.